All right, John, you want to take it away?
Let's do it. Hey, everybody. My name is John McGeehan. We're super excited to have you today. Welcome to Building Resilience Amidst a Pandemic, a topic I know we've all been talking about over the past 4 months, an important one to certainly continue talking about. And we're super excited in particular today to have Menninger and Vaughan Gilmore, the Director of Addiction Services. So welcome, Vaughan. We're really excited to have you today. Also, I just wanted to give a thanks to Meg Horn as well from coordinating from the Menninger side. As far as the dorm side, we have my partner, Dr. Amanda Fialk, will also be presenting as well today. She is the Chief of Clinical Services at the dorm. Real quick, as far as housekeeping, we'll do a PowerPoint presentation that generally runs about 35 minutes. If any questions come up during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat box. The presentation will be available and will be circulating directly following this. So anybody that would like a copy of the PowerPoint, you certainly will have it in your email box shortly. And after the PowerPoint, we'll be going to a Q&A. So there'll be at least 20-25 minutes available to keep the conversation going. So with that, I asked Meredith to cue up the slides, and Vaughan, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me today. So really talking about resilience in the midst of a global pandemic, and really just thinking about the uncertainty of life, not only for our clients, but also for us as organizations, as treatment professionals, and really how our own resiliency reserves might be challenged during these times, as we are also trying to help our clients who are likely being incredibly challenged during these uncertain times. And this is honestly the new normal. You know, what we're seeing, and that's really what I want to talk about today, is what we're seeing in terms of our clients that are either have completed our program and are still in contact with us, and then also what we're seeing from the clients coming in and sort of a shift in what they're needing and what they're struggling with, and then how we're adapting as an organization, because we're certainly being taxed as professionals as well, and as an organization really having to be agile in how we're adapting things like childcare issues, sort of how staff are managing their own stress and anxiety, maybe staff are having their own economic issues, and then really thinking about how we're changing our services to sort of include virtual and helping our clients navigate really a different landscape in terms of aftercare and the world of virtual recovery, because it's really quite different than what we used to sort of be helping them transition into. First, just kind of having a shared understanding of what resilience is, this positive adaptation in the face of significant adversity. I mean, many of our clients have already overcome significant adversity to get where they are now. They've sort of survived up until this point. But really what I'm seeing is a lot of clients that were sort of maintaining, and then the pandemic really kind of put them over the edge in terms of being able to manage their lives. We think about resilience as a dynamic, really developmental process that is this positive adaptation. It's usually actually researched and studied in sort of children, specifically children that have overcome some type of trauma or adversity. But I think when we're thinking about adults with severe mental illness or severe substance use disorders, many of these concepts of can they sort of bounce back after sort of difficult experiences is incredibly applicable. And we really are looking at how they are and how we are sort of navigating all these challenges. So how is COVID challenging our reserves? Well, there's probably thousands of ways. And what I'll sort of highlight today is what we're seeing in our setting in terms of how it's impacting us as professionals and really our clients. And probably the most obvious and most common is really just sort of the change in socialization. right? The reduced access to face-to-face supports, sort of community, the just sort of more natural connection that people had, maybe just limited access to other family members that they're not able to spend time with or visit because of health concerns right now. So we're really seeing that the isolation and the loneliness is impacting our staff and our clients. The disruption in routine, right? So when clients are discharging from treatment and in early recovery, one of the most essential things is consistent routine, structure, accountability. And very quickly that was lost for so many people. A lot of interviews I've done lately, really it's this sort of extreme escalation of substance use, with sort of a change in routine, right? If there's no more accountability for having to be at work at a certain time or sort of outside commitments, maybe somebody that was sort of problem drinking but managing it in an okay way, that lack of accountability really is going to contribute to an increase in substance use. Changes in treatment. So just availability of resources for clients that might have sort of social anxiety issues or depression or substance use. Moving to virtual treatment likely we know is difficult, right? And we saw so many of the programs have to move virtually. Things like play therapy are being done virtually, which is kind of just hard to even imagine. I have kids in play therapy, which is just not the same virtually, right? So this is sort of just many tiers of services having to move virtual. That's just not quite the same as face-to-face. So we know resiliency is this ability to adapt, and it's going to sort of tax everyone's coping resources, but individuals that are already struggling in terms of sort of their ability to manage stress are going to struggle even more. So some of the emotional impact of increased frustration about what is even going on. We were just talking earlier about, will we go back to school? The frustration and uncertainty of that is impacting us. Boredom is a huge one. We think about boredom as a big relapse risk. So just again, that lack of structure, the boredom, the increase in free time, and then just the fear of the unknown, fear of health, fear of safety, all of these things really exacerbating psychiatric symptoms that might already be there. We've also seen some research on actually PTSD symptoms, specifically for clients, not our clients, but for individuals that are hospitalized for COVID, are having sort of higher rates of PTSD symptoms. We know past research on healthcare professionals who have worked during epidemics, they have higher rates of PTSD as well. So I think, we've seen some health professionals admit to our professionals program, but I imagine there will be sort of a later wave of health professionals whose resiliency has really been taxed by the epidemic. And then grief and loss. So, we have just a complicated situation, making grieving even more complicated. People sort of not being able to grieve with their families, maybe grieving just the loss of a life that they had before. All of these things are more and more complicated. So even if somebody already has sort of some baseline resiliency, these are just a few ways that all of that is being challenged right now. So there is some research on really what supports or sort of what constitutes somebody's like actual level of resiliency. So there's some things that like predict or determine how resilient somebody might be. Not a surprise, close and caring relationships is one of those key factors. So how supported are they? Not how many relationships do they have, but really how sort of connected are they? And this is one of the things that we think about that's so important in recovery. We know that a close relationship with a sponsor or somebody else with lived experience really predicts success in recovery. So this sort of goes hand in hand with somebody's sort of recovery success and their level of resiliency. How good are they at self-regulation? We teach a lot of self-regulation skills in treatment. And so we're likely seeing people that maybe have lower levels, lower baseline levels of resiliency sort of coming into treatment. Maybe they were already struggling to manage their stress, but getting by. And this has really kind of put them over the edge. Most of the assessments I've done over the past couple of months usually include some type of worsening of symptoms in March, really when the pandemic started. So we just see that inability, or that sort of reduced ability for self-regulation. Physical health. So we know that physical health is also tied to resiliency in terms of actually things like sleep, exercise, diet. We also know that people are not sleeping well right now because of increased stress and anxiety. Maybe they have sort of additional workload, trying to parent and work full-time from home, which is sort of an additional risk factor for our clients actually with substance use disorders that might have sort of health complications, things like smoking, for example, that might make them even more vulnerable and less resilient right now. We also know that things like self-efficacy, pro-social engagement really predict resilience, ability to problem solve, and then the active coping strategies. So for our clients that might tend towards more avoidant coping, sort of minimize symptoms, tend to sort of manage life by disengaging, they're really going to be operating from a deficit right now because they don't have the resiliency of active coping strategies. So post-traumatic growth, when I was thinking about this, I really was thinking about like our clients' ability to bounce back, but I was also really thinking about our organizational ability to bounce back. Because this really on a larger level has been incredibly sort of challenge offered to us as an organization and to all the helping professionals. Like, can we adapt? Can we grow? Can we actually come out of this with better services and better able to meet the needs of our clients? So we've really been doing a lot of shifting as an organization to be more agile in meeting our clients' needs, and hopefully in some ways kind of like modeling that for our clients, that as we're trying to figure out all of these technology solutions, we're actually going to have a better continuum of care at the end of this. So I really want to just mention a few of the things that we are seeing as an organization kind of over the past couple of months. And a lot of this I've already mentioned, really the impact of the pandemic on individuals that were already experiencing symptoms. You know, most of our clients have long-term severe psychiatric symptoms that have just gotten worse. So we've had a number of clients that readmitted, right, who had been sort of stable, but they've needed to come back to treatment because they've sort of either had a relapse in substance use or in psychiatric symptoms. We've seen clients describing really that marked increase in substance use and then also actually process addictions because of the isolation and the lack of structure. So, and again, hearing about clients that were maybe problematically using a substance up until March, but then things really kind of escalated after then. And lots of process addictions in terms of like video games, technology, some problematic sexual behavior. Again, that might have been somewhat concerning before, but the lack of routine and structure really escalated. We've just had so many alumni reaching out for support and virtual resources, especially early on, wanting to know how we could support them, and we have responded to that. And then ultimately, as you know, an inpatient psychiatric hospital, we sort of have seen the importance that some of our clients still need, like in-person, face-to-face treatment, right? That they are not well enough to be supported by virtual services. just sort of given not only their functioning, but also the lack of other sort of face-to-face services in our community. And so we've been responding in a lot of different ways to kind of support the needs of our population. We have, in a short period of time, really expanded our alumni offerings with a lot of sort of education, support, and in an increased number of people participating in our alumni services. We've been doing some increased virtual continuing education for other mental health professionals. There's been a demand for that. We've actually used this to expand our continuum of care. So during this time, we've actually launched a couple of new programs. We've launched actually a moms program called Menninger Moms. There was such a need for specifically moms who are at home with their kids and needing virtual support. So we've got, they're doing like virtual support groups and clinical check-ins with with a psychologist and a psychiatrist on our team, because there's just such a need there. We've made a lot of changes to our recovery programming. We had to figure out how to incorporate virtual volunteers. All right, so we have on-site recovery meetings that were staffed by community volunteers, but right now as a hospital in Texas, we cannot have volunteers or outside visitors. So my team and our IT team have spent a lot of time figuring out how do we have our volunteers participate from the outside. How do we make some of this actually more open to our alumni who are not local as well? So now we are running hybrid recovery meetings that include both people in person that are in our treatment center and outside in the community. You know, it also has offered, in terms of like growth, an opportunity for some of our clients to attend virtual recovery meetings that they would have not been able to attend before. So, you know, for example, we don't have any on-site SLAA meetings, but sometimes we have clients interested in attending those. And now they're able to attend those virtually. And that was something that we really had not offered before, that we easily can offer, had just never thought of. So we've really had some opportunities to kind of grow virtually in those areas. And then again, I mentioned, like, we've had to continue to support some of our clients that really need it with face-to-face, both in the hospital and then in our community integration programs.
All right, thanks so much, Vaughan. I'm gonna take over from here a bit. At the dorm, we're seeing a lot of very similar things, it sounds like, Vaughan, to what you guys are seeing at Menninger. So, you know, unsurprising, regardless of where you live, coronavirus is impacting us all over the country and all over the world, for that matter. You know, I think that when I think about a concept like change is difficult, whether it's good change or bad change. Abrupt change is even more challenging. And what happened in the face of coronavirus, at least in New York, it felt like the world changed almost overnight. The city shut down pretty quickly and pretty abruptly, and same in Washington, D.C. And it left many of our clients feeling emotionally and mentally tired and frustrated and anxious and overwhelmed. And whenever you have additional stress and anxiety, and you pair that with mental health diagnoses, whether that's addiction, depression, trauma, and eating disorder, you're going to see an exacerbation in symptoms. You couple that with not having the normal outlets for social connection and social support because of shelter in place and social distancing measures, and then once again, that is another notch in the exacerbation of symptoms. And then there's a process of grief and mourning. A lot of our clients who are young adults had to mourn the a life that no longer looks the same. And we don't know how long it's going to look like this for. And I think that's what makes the grief process a lot more challenging, is that nobody knows when life is going to look normal again, or if it will, what the new normal will look like. For many of our young adult clients, they didn't get to attend high school graduations or college graduations. For those that were about to start school, their freshman year in college, they're not getting to have that typical freshman year experience. These are all losses. And I think that we have to validate that these are very significant losses and help our clients to process that. The good news is, on the flip side, is that in the face of all of this change, stress, social distancing, grief, and mourning, we have seen pretty surprising levels of both adaptability and resilience, both on the part of our clients and our staff. And I think it's important also to make sure that we validate, like you were saying, Vaughan, that our staff are going through a lot right now as well. What we're doing to support our clients during this time of change is we're basically, adding in additional supports, knowing that we have to. We, at this point, are doing more of a hybrid care model where 3 days a week we're in person, 2 days a week we do virtual treatment. Some of our clients have opted to stay fully virtual. Many are doing the hybrid model. But what we're doing for all of our clients is we're recognizing that day-to-day life looks a little bit different than what they're used to. And as a result, in addition to all their regularly scheduled groups and individual sessions, their coach, who is a licensed clinician, is checking in with them first thing in the morning and then right before they go to bed. And those checks basically ground them, and they help to structure the day, to set goals and expectation for the day, and then at the end of the day to sort of take inventory and to look at what worked today amidst everything that's going on, what didn't work so great but maybe can work better tomorrow, and then help with sleep hygiene, because we're finding that that is one of the first things to go in the middle of this type of pandemic, especially on days that were virtual, because you don't necessarily need to get up as early, and things like showering become more optional rather than something that you typically do. So we're really just trying to keep the ADLs and sleep hygiene intact. Like you guys, we're doing a lot more alumni outreach. In addition, our alumni are outreaching us a lot as well. Because they maybe want some additional support after having left, but now finding themselves trying to navigate a new world. And B, to offer support to our clients, which has been so wonderful. And they're showing up both to do virtual support, some of our more virtual social opportunities they're joining, and it's been a wonderful way for them to help structure their time now that they also have a little bit more free time on their hands. Maybe they're not back at school, maybe they're no longer working because they've lost their job because of coronavirus, and our alumni being able to play a mentor role and to do service has been wonderful for our clients and for them. We've also increased our health and wellness programming so that every day of the week there is some type of health and wellness activity that is offered, whether that's yoga, exercise, Zumba, meditation, mindfulness. The importance of getting up and moving around, especially when we're sitting at computers so much more than we typically do, is really important. We've also increased the number of social activities that we're doing. And that seems odd given that we're in the middle of a national or worldwide pandemic. But we've gotten really creative with how we are socializing. We're doing a lot of virtual socialization activities like virtual talent shows, virtual pet show and tells, virtual scavenger hunts have been so much fun. You'll oftentimes, if you're on the Upper West Side or in DuPont Circle, you'll see our clients walking around town like with their phones up like this and searching around on doing different scavenger hunt things. But there are ways to connect and have fun while maintaining social distance and while protecting your physical health. And of course, right now the weather's nice, so any outdoor activities that we can take advantage of, we do. We have weekly community meetings where our entire community, staff, clients get together and check in and create new initiatives and process what's going on. We assess how what we're doing as an organization is helping to support them during this time. They certainly make suggestions in terms of things that we could be doing differently or things they would like to see added. And what's really interesting is that, I think switching and doing more virtual programming is actually more difficult for the staff than it is for the clients. They're pretty good at navigating a virtual world, and they've taught us how to do a lot of this. We just needed to listen and to get their feedback, but they've really helped make the transition for us at least a lot more seamless. We have also been doing a lot more community challenges around gratitude and small acts of kindness. I think that in times like this, it's always important to be mindful of what we do have to be grateful for, and challenging our clients to remember that. And then opportunities for volunteering virtually with various communities and organizations in the community, and then giving back. We've done multiple initiatives throughout this pandemic where we've attached attendance to donating to greater causes, whether that's No Kid Hungry or NAMI. What we're doing is we're telling our clients that every time that you show up for a group or an individual session, we're going to donate $1 on behalf of you just showing up for yourself to these organizations. And we as a community pick the organizations, which has been wonderful. And now I'm going to talk about what we're calling the resilience toolbox. And these are the things that we're trying to work on with our clients. I think what is important to remember is that resilience is a skill. I hear many people say things like, well, he was just born resilient, or she's just so resilient. That's always the way that she has been. And while that might be true, I don't believe that resiliency or being resilient is something that you either have or you don't have. I think it's a skill. And I think that, like any skill or any muscle, that when you work it and when you practice it over time, it gets stronger and stronger. So it's our job as clinicians to help our clients to practice building those skills. It's also our job as clinicians to constantly be practicing and working on building our own resiliency skills. And there really is no one strategy for building resilience. I think it's a multi-pronged and holistic approach is needed. And what works for some people might not work for others. And we have to pick and choose the specific strategies that work for us. And you can move to the next slide, Meredith. So one of those skills that we're working on is something called radical acceptance, which many of you know is also a DBT skill. Being open to challenging experiences and thoughts and feelings is a skill. And I think it can be really easy to try to suppress or change these challenging situations. But the truth is, no matter how hard we try to suppress or change them, they are what they are. Coronavirus is here, and the world looks the way that it works, and we have to radically accept that. But coming from a radically accepting place doesn't mean that we're going to judge or invalidate thoughts or feelings that we're having. We're going to acknowledge those difficult thoughts or feelings, but acknowledge it as just that. I'm having this thought, and it's a thought. I'm having this feeling, and it's a feeling. It's nothing more, it's nothing less. I think that through a process of radical acceptance, these difficult thoughts and feelings can start to lose their power. We can also try to reframe the negative thoughts, and when they pop up, own them, state them, think about where they stem from, and then offer 3 positive alternative thoughts as counters. Awareness and mindfulness. What we know is that research indicates that mindfulness and a mindfulness practice can help build resilience by supporting our ability to access these critical levels of inner calm and peace and strength. Deep breathing and breath work exercises can help calm the nervous system and counteract panic and discomfort. And also, as part of mindful practice, we're fully aware in the present moment with our 5 senses. And that can help us to stop ruminating about the future or lamenting about the past. Instead, it helps us to be here in the present and in the here and now, which is really all that we have anyway. Gratitude and connection. This is, like I said, when I was describing some of our initiatives, something that we're focusing on a lot, because this is something very tangible that we can do. And practicing gratitude is a great way of enhancing well-being and offering ourselves a way of hope. Clients can also benefit from things like daily journal challenges, where we ask them on a daily basis to write 5 things that they are grateful for, or to commit to expressing gratitude directly to a loved one 3 or 4 times a day. These simple acts can go a long way in making one feel better about oneself and in building resilience. Building a network of empathic and compassionate people helps us feel less alone and more resilient in a time of need. So connection during this time is more important than ever. We have said from day one of coronavirus that social distancing does not mean social isolation. And that is vital, especially for people struggling with mental health and with addiction issues. So while we might have to get creative, and while we might have to utilize a little bit more energy than we're used to in order to try to connect, it is possible. There are tons of opportunities, and I think it's our job as helping professionals to really focus on helping our clients to take advantage of those maybe non-conventional ways of connecting with others during this time. Finding meaning and giving back. When we align ourselves with our core values, that can help us to feel and become more resilient. So as providers, if we can help our clients to identify and consider the areas of their lives that are important to them, hobbies, job, relationships, or how they want to live their lives, or do they have a deep connection to things like doing service or social justice? If we can help them to figure out what those core values are and then take actions that align with those core values, we will in turn be helping them to build their resilience or their resiliency reserves. So intentionally engaging in actions that are aligned with values is something that we have been doing. One thing that we've specifically done is we've created a committee here called Justice at the Dorm. We have a bunch of clients in our New York and DC location that feel very strongly about social justice related issues. And they meet once a week with themselves, and there's some staff involved, to talk about actions that they can take, that we can all do together as an organization that are aligned with core values. And I think that for some of these clients, I've seen at least that during these justice meetings is when they light up the most. It is giving them a sense of meaning and purpose during a time that feels very uncertain. Taking care of self. In order to be resilient, you have to be taking care of yourself. And that means sleeping. That means being self-compassionate. That means not being so hard on ourselves with certain expectations, and reminding ourselves that we're human and that we need to treat ourselves with grace during hard times. It means exercising. It means eating well. It means laughing. I think that laughing is so cathartic, and that being able to keep one's sense of humor even during difficult times is certainly a very strong sign of inner resilience. And finding opportunities to laugh, whether that's doing, we've done virtual talent shows, and some staff members have certainly participated and demonstrated talents during the talent shows, and that has caused many laughs for our clients. But laughing is very therapeutic, and I think we need to remember that. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to everybody for coming, and to Vaughan for co-presenting, and Menninger and Meg. And we just wanted to open up the discussion to everybody in talking about this concept of resilience, and what either we're doing as helping professionals to build our resilience so that we can be better helpers, or how we're helping our clients, what we're seeing them struggle with in terms of building resilience. But I'd love to hear from everybody here. And you guys can feel free to put things in the chat box if you're more comfortable typing than speaking.
Amanda, I just love that idea, like sort of really how you guys are engaging your clients, like from more of like a social justice perspective, like that really, I mean, is just another stressor that probably people are experiencing, like a lot of fear, maybe anger, anxiety, you know, about things that are happening in our country outside of the pandemic. So I think that's such a nice way to maybe engage them and empower them and build some resiliency there. I love that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always wonder, you know, because New York and DC tend to be cities where we see a lot of activity in those arenas, and I'm curious to hear what's going on in Texas, and how clients in different parts of the country are reacting to everything, and how that impacts anxiety levels and stress and all of that.
I remember I had a client that I interviewed earlier this summer that specifically, like, things that were happening politically had really been an exacerbating factor in his level of distress, and sort of like psychiatric symptoms that he was experiencing. It was a young adult who just, yeah, it was a very specific sort of factor that contributed. Mm-hmm.
I see Barbara wrote that spending time in nature, near water, has been great. Learning new skills such as carpentry also has been great. We actually went as a group down to the water, the Hudson River. So it's not a big, beautiful, light blue ocean, but it is the water. And our clients are really like taking advantage of the parks a lot more during this time. And I love the idea of learning new skills, whether that's a new language or something more tangible. I think that there's, especially with our college age students who might not be going back to school because virtual school doesn't appeal to them and hybrid school doesn't, they just want to take a leave, that the silver lining in this is this could be a wonderful opportunity to just take a year for yourself and to grow and to work on certain aspects of self that you would not have had the opportunity to do so otherwise. I'm curious on this Zoom. Something else just came in. I've been walking around my neighborhood every morning, and I've met so many neighbors and their dogs, and it has helped. Do people feel, I was going to actually talk about this, and this relates to that comment that just came in from David. do people feel that there has been more of a sense of community and coming together and bonding during this time? Or have people been more on edge and kind of short with each other?
It's kind of funny you say that because in a weird way, I see the positive and like around where I live near a lake and there's so many people out there in the community and walking. And David, you mentioned you've met your neighbors with dogs, and you know, we joke that we see more birds than we've ever seen, and wow, is it weird that there are more birds? But no, I think we're just out there to see the birds and we weren't there before. So I think people are actually finding community and paying attention to each other and trying to help each other. And if we can just focus on that aspect of everything that's going on around us, the better off we're going to be. But yeah, there's the negative part too, that you try to block yourself from, and all the 24/7 incoming data and media and all of that too. So it's a double-edged sword.
I've been finding in where I live in New York City, a lot of community, and it's been really healing and just a sign of real resilience. And I think it's something that young adults and teens can get so much out of. But we've had a food drive in our building, a drive for a local women's shelter. We have a lot of our residents have been baking. I live across the street from NYU Bellevue, so we've been baking. We have hashtag Sweet Sunday, and we bake for the hospital workers. And we've made a wall of gratitude and made signs across the street from NYU Bellevue. And we have a neighbor to neighbor helping committee. And we're also supporting local business by having the different restaurants give us a special promo code just for our residents, and we're ordering from a lot of the restaurants. So all these creative ideas have come. A lot of the kids in our building are also writing to elderly people in nursing homes. And all these ideas have come out of the community. But those kinds of things I think are so wonderful because it shows the resilience of the community and of the individuals in it. And it's very infectious. So if more and more people keep getting involved. So it's a very powerful thing, I think, for young people in treatment to have these kinds of outlets and get from them how they might want to help other people. It draws on their own strengths and directs it towards other people. So I've been really, that's been something that's been really remarkable, I think.
Thank you for that, Leslie. I think, you know, I'm also in New York, and it's, you know, I remember hearing this sort of as a mantra for the first couple of months following our shelter in place, and that's, there's no playbook for this. Nobody knows how to do it. Nobody knows what to do, but we're all in this together. And I think for me, the playbook has become community. The playbook has become connection. And I think both Vaughan and Amanda mentioned this. It's leaning into our clients and the insight and the creativity that they have, because they know so much more about the virtual landscape than I ever will. And they've found a community, you know, that certainly predates COVID online. And by leaning into them and allowing them to really help us to shape this, it's, you know, my hope is there's many aspects that we've adopted at the dorm, and it sounds like you guys have at Menninger as well, that will live far beyond COVID. I mean, even in my personal life, I can't tell you how many like college roommates that are around the world that we've had dinner together on Zoom. Like I never would have done that before. So just an opportunity to reconnect with old folks. I feel like this has forced us online in a way that we never could have imagined being comfortable. And collectively, we can sit together and say it's working to a certain extent. So that's been sort of the silver lining for me.
How have, in terms of navigating virtual treatment, what have you guys sort of seen at Menninger being the biggest challenges?
I think you mentioned it. I think a lot of it is the staff burnout of sitting in front of the staff that are doing all virtual. Like, I mean, we have kind of a mix because our inpatient staff are still seeing clients face to face, you know, wearing masks, which is a separate challenge. And then a lot of our community programs are hybrid, like you all are, right? Some virtual, some in person, and then our regular outpatient services are just all virtual. And I think there's just a level of exhaustion on the part of the provider. I mean, sitting there, I don't know if anybody's doing this, sitting there, you know, 7 hours a day, like just in virtual session after virtual session. I know how exhausted I feel just after a day of virtual meetings, much less virtual therapy. So I think that's definitely been an obstacle that really there's not an ideal solution to. I don't think. Yeah, Zoom fatigue is very real.
Yeah.
No, and I think for some of the clients, I think the other thing we've seen is it's been easier to switch virtual when it's an existing client. It's been much harder to maybe start and build that rapport in the same way virtually. What about you all?
Yeah, similar. I think that the fatigue is very real. It's exhausting. We've shortened, we've made sure that we all have a 10-minute break in between sessions so that you can just walk around and reset basically, and then also making sure that we build in health and wellness activities every couple hours on virtual days so that it's not just back to back. So needing to be much more strategic in the way that the treatment schedule is organized, I think has gone a long way. And then, you know, there's of course always going to be sort of the funny Zoom stories that you have with clients who like to do funny things because they're showing up, you know, on Zoom sessions. So setting up, we're calling them Zorms for Zoom group norms, just in terms of what's appropriate behavior. You know, you still have to wear clothes, you still have to be sitting, like you can't show up from your bathtub, which we had happen once, you know, that kind of stuff.
You know, Vaughan, what's been interesting as well is, you know, looking at sort of a reentry protocol and obviously doing it safely is somewhat sterile. You know, it requires folks to be masked for an entire treatment day. That's from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. at night. Social distancing certainly throughout. So the spacing between folks that are sitting and sort of spatial recognition is for some of our clients a real concern and something that we need to be constantly monitoring. And what we've found in this sort of virtual and in-person split is they still want to be in person.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we didn't know if that was going to be the case because it's extremely convenient to log in from your couch at home or from your bed. But, you know, speaking to that sort of community and human connection, there is still a very strong desire to be in person and be in community.
Yeah, I mean, I think our staff are experiencing it too. I mean, so like for all of our inpatient programs, you know, we're seeing patients face to face and doing groups face to face with lots of safeguards in place in terms of screening at admission and wearing masks and lots of screening for staff. But a lot of our other meetings are actually virtual, right? So our staff are meeting for like team meetings and things like that virtually just to limit contact. But something is sort of lost, I think, in that you don't have like everyone who got there early that's sort of hanging out, drinking their coffee before the meeting. You know, you just sort of miss out on the sort of camaraderie that really helps us do this difficult work that you don't sort of get in the sterile virtual environment in the same way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very true. Some of our staff have set up like virtual coffees and virtual lunches and just to get that back, because we miss that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts or observations?
I've enjoyed this meeting, and it was inspiring and refreshing. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
So on that note of honoring a sort of stretch and horizon looking break before 4 o'clock, why don't I close it out here? Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Vaughan, for this presentation today. Please all keep a lookout for the PowerPoint. We'll be following up also with all of our contact information. So I certainly encourage you to reach out to any one of us if you'd like to keep this conversation going. And on that note, we've been doing this every week since March 17th. I think this is number 16. Surprisingly, time is flying by. And we're going to be taking the rest of the month off from these roundtables to have a bit of a break, but we'll be coming back on Thursday, September 3rd with Ross Ellenhorn, talking about how community integration has really set up nicely for supporting during this sort of flexible pandemic time. So we'll look forward to sending you all out that invitation for September 3rd to talk about community integration during this pandemic. So with that, I wish you all a happy August, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.